everybody.
Hello. Welcome to the first installment of the Cam and Kenna Show.
I am McKenna Buckley.
And I'm Cameron Armstrong. We're with the Peterson team at eXp Realty in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And today we're going to talk about how to be competitive with your offers in a market that is blowing up.
Well, first off, let's talk about spring. What are we headed towards?
Well, springtime is when you start your selling and buying frenzy, usually around the 1st of April, end of March, which is where we're at right now. You start to see a lot of homes come on the market. Most folks, especially if they have children, will wait until after school is out before they decide to sell and make a move. But let's face it, nobody wants to pack and move in the snow. So spring and summer is the time to get it done. And then they want to have it done before, if you have children, you want to have that done before the kids go back to school. So this is the busiest season. Quarter 2 and 3 are the busiest seasons for real estate in our area. And so you're about to start seeing that feeding frenzy.
Yeah. And with that comes really competitive offers, and we have made some ways that we can really be competitive in this market, and we're going to talk about a few of those things. What's the first one?
Well, unfortunately, in our market and with the appreciation that we're seeing in our market and how things are going, when we go into this feeding frenzy, unfortunately, you're probably going to end up paying more for that home than what the list price is. In fact, a good listing agent, a smart listing agent, is going to list that property right at or maybe just a little bit below what the market is saying it should be selling at, and they'll do that in order to create multiple offer situations and drive that price up for their seller, which that's their job. Their job is to represent the seller to the best of their ability and get the most money for that house for their seller. So when you're on the buy side of that, you've got to look at that and say, okay, this is structured to create multiple offers and it's going to be competitive. And so you're going to have to consider paying more than what the list price is for that property. And in many instances, it's going to be worth more than what the list price is, especially, 2 or 3 years from now, you're going to be sitting on some good equity.
Mm-hmm. And right now, the most competitive price range, I would say, is anything $250 to $400. And you can expect to pay anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 above asking in those price ranges.
Highly competitive, especially that $300,000, $350,000 to $400,000. One of our other agents in the office just was writing an offer Saturday, and list price at $399. They had 12 offers on it the first day, and she did not win the contract. So I'm not exactly positive how strong her offer was, but she was competing against 11 other buyers and trying to secure that property for her buyer. So we need to make sure when you're looking at that we're being as competitive as possible with price.
Yep. Another competitive thing that you can do is to expect to pay your own closing costs. Those can average about 3% of the purchase price, and a long time ago, people really, it was popular to have the sellers pay that from their profits, and that's just really not popular to do anymore. Expecting to pay your own closing costs will give you an edge. I actually have a client currently that didn't want to pay her own closing costs, and we ended up losing a couple of deals before we changed our mind. So
that's unfortunate.
It is, yeah, it is important to be as competitive as you can.
Well, one thing you can do with closing costs too, McKenna, is depending on how the qualification is for your buyer, add those closing costs to the top end of the price, and that way your seller's not taking less for the home or asking to be, coming up with more money out of their pocket. And in the long run, your seller is basically financing your buyer's financing those closing costs. So that's kind of a way around that little rule about not being able to finance your closing costs. You add that to the top end of the price and then ask the seller to pay it. And that's so that you're still financing your closing costs and wrapping those into the loan, but you're going to pay for them over 30 years is the unfortunate thing for that. But that is one way around that, and one way to convince sellers to help you with your closing costs, add it to the top end of the price.
Mm-hmm. And then what's another way that they can be competitive?
You want to get higher earnest money.
Mm-hmm.
Earnest money, people ask me what earnest money is, and it's kind of a down payment. It's part of your down payment that goes towards the house. It's not, down payment's different than closing costs. I've got a video with things that you should ask your lender that's coming up here in a couple of days, and we'll go over closing costs in that. But your earnest money applies towards your down payment. But what you want to do is offer more earnest money, because that's the definition. basically is Earnest. The seller wants to know exactly how serious you are about buying their home, and higher earnest money, more earnest money, lets that seller know that you're serious, that you're a serious buyer, that you really want the home, that this is a solid deal. One thing that you can do once you're past the inspection contingency, you've negotiated all inspection items and everything like that, stipulate in the contract that the earnest money becomes non-refundable, or the earnest money goes hard, so to speak. That's the kind of the terminology in the industry. It's hard earnest money. So, you know, the thing about that is people will look at it and say non-refundable, but once you're past the inspection contingency, that's kind of where you are anyway, because after you've asked the sellers to pay for certain repair items and do certain things to appease an appraiser, then there's not a seller out there that I know of that wouldn't ask for your earnest money, because they've been asked to put out money on the house and they want to recoup their costs. So it's not something that is necessarily going to hurt your buyer or you as a buyer, but it's something that the seller will see and say, they are serious about my home.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that is with the appraisal, you can offer an appraisal gap, which means that if you offer $200,000 on a home and it appraises for $150,000, if you offered an appraisal gap of say $10,000, then they would have to drop that price down to meet you at that $10,000, which would be $160,000. So that's another way too of just throwing a little niche in there that'll get you a little bit more strength on your offer.
And the thing with an appraisal gap in a market that's appreciating as quickly as ours is, appraisers, when we do what we call a CMA, or comparative market analysis, and we'll let our buyers know if this home is priced correctly or not, we'll actually do a CMA on the property we want to write the offer on. But with a market that's appreciating as fast as ours, appraisers are only able to use closed properties. They're not allowed to use properties that are currently on the market as active, and they're not allowed to use pending properties. They're only allowed to use closed properties. So unfortunately, appraisers are usually 2 to 3, sometimes 6 months behind the curve in appreciation. So offering that appraisal gap is something that can really help things along too, because like I said, if the appraiser says it doesn't make value, that doesn't mean that it's not necessarily worth what you're paying for it. And making up for that appraisal gap is one way to make your offer stand out, and like I said again, let the seller know that you're very serious about the home.
Mm-hmm. And one thing to just really understand as you're getting into the market is to just, once you get your pre-approval, just know that you have to look at homes underneath that approval. I send homes in all ranges underneath approval to my clients that fit their needs. If a home is even $100,000 less than what they're approved for, I still will show it to them just to make sure that it's not a perfect fit for them, because you never know what's gonna really fit their needs.
Yeah, that's such sage advice. If you're going to be having to have someone else pay your closing costs, if you're going to add that to the top end of the price, if you're going to offer an appraisal gap, things of that nature, you're going to have to shop below your pre-approval, just because you need that room to be able to maneuver. And speaking of pre-approvals, always be pre-approved.
Get pre-approved, yes.
Always.
Before you start looking at homes.
And we here at the Peterson team, we've worked with the best lenders in town, and we can refer you to someone who's a good fit for you. If you watched my previous video on the first 3 things you need to do when you start shopping for a house, we go through that a little bit and tell you how to spotlight how to interview a lender and make sure that that's the right loan package for you and that they've got the best terms and policies. And don't be afraid to shop around for a lender. We can refer several, and you interview them just like you interviewed us. And but being pre-approved, you know, that's imperative in this market. That's your lender giving you a check for X amount and saying go shop, rather than say, yeah, we can do this loan later on. You know, you need to be pre-approved 110%.
Yep, absolutely. And the best part about having a real estate agent on your side is that they know everything there is to know about the market, and we are here to support you through the process. So give us a call if you're ready to buy a home.
Okay. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you can be alerted to our new videos coming up. And thanks, McKenna. This has been the first installment of our weekly video on the Cam and Kenna Show.